A major move from India's market regulator, where SEBI has actually introduced a new incentive structure for mutual fund distributors aimed at expanding financial inclusion. Now, this is especially amongst the first-time investors from smaller cities and among women across the country. The regulator has actually added that the earlier system wasn't working as intended and was often misused. And now, under the new model, incentives will now be available only for brand new PAN investors, and that includes new individual investors from beyond the top 30 cities, as well as new women investors from any location. In fact, the distributors can claim the incentive only on the first qualifying investment, with dual claims strictly prohibited. To give us more insights into this, Sanjay Shah, Chairman and Managing Director at Prudent Corporate Advisory, joins in. Sanjay, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure to speak to you at NDTV Profit. Hiral on this side. You know, with everything that I just spoke about in terms of the new incentives that would be rolled out for mutual fund distributors, first up, your view and the impact you're expecting to see.
Good morning to everybody. And I think this is something which is very well drafted move by the SEBI, because if you look at it in the last couple of years, we have been seeing that more and more participation has been coming due to the mutual funds. If I talk about the numbers, I think by COVID in March 20, total number of unique investors in the industry were 0.1 crore. When I'm talking to you now, that number has moved to almost 5.75 crore. However, still, the mutual fund AUM, only 20-25% AUM comes from beyond 30 cities. So, to really bring the financial inclusiveness, I think providing the, giving the lot of, let's say, the assistance to the beyond 30 people to participate in the India growth story, I think mutual fund is the best vehicle. And SEBI has came out with a one-time incentive structure for those who do an efforts to bring new investors from beyond 30 cities. Plus, second most important thing is they also are concerned about participation of women at large at the country level. So if you bring a new woman investors from any part of the corner of the country, then also you'll get the additional incentive. So I think it's a very, very well thought out move, and we assume that this will have a very long lasting impact. If you look at the monetary,
Just to clarify, I want to understand. So the change in the norm is that whereas previously any investment that initiated from B30 was given a benefit, and now only the first investment is given a benefit. And so the question that I have for you is, do you anticipate that some flows will ease up? Because we had reached a point earlier this year where the contribution from SIPs from B30 was actually higher than your top 30 cities.
So you are right, but actually if you look at since March 2023, these additional incentive which were given to B30 investors has already been removed by the regulator. So previously, any amount which comes from beyond 30 by the investor up to 2 lakh rupees, they used to earn an additional incentive. However, the regulator found that because of the 2 lakh cap and it was available in the first year, a lot of splitting of the applications and the investment churning was happening. So I think to restrict that behavior, they withdrew the incentive, and then they at that time only they said that we'll probably give a look at this entire structure, we'll come back again. So now they said that additional incentive will be given only to those people who are new to the industry. So as I told you that today we have roughly about 5.75 crore investors. I think if you look at last month, roughly about 8.5 lakh new investors came to the industry. Out of that, I believe 40% would be from the beyond 30 cities. So roughly annually 40-50 lakh investors come from beyond 30. With this incentive structure, this number can definitely go back to almost about 1 crore. Another important change would be that last time when incentives was given, the AMC were allowed to charge up to 30 basis point extra over and about TR to this scheme. Now this additional incentive comes from 2 basis point of investor education and the financial inclusion money which has been given to the AMC. From that kitty money will go. So there is no additional burden on investors as far as this amount payout is concerned.
Sanjay, good morning. Neeraj here. This move individually notwithstanding, what has amazed me is the kind of consistency that a distribution franchise can show in its numbers while retaining or improving return ratios, operational metrics, etc. You are an example of that. My question though is that the base might play a part as well in the initial decade before it starts plateauing out or at least coming off a little bit. How long do you think Prudent as an entity can continue exhibiting these tenets of growth in a rising market like India, of consistency in growth, improving return ratios, margins, so on and so forth?
Neeraj bhai, if you look at, I think even after reaching to this level of 5.75 crore investors, we hardly probably had about 4% participation. I think as far as Prudent is concerned, we are very, very scalable and sustainable on the business because our AUM book is very, very strong. When I'm talking, my AUM is almost, my SIP book is almost about 1100 crore rupees a month, which is roughly, if you annualize to my AUM to SIP ratio, it's roughly about 10 to 11%. So if you normally look at that, my SIP contribute 10 to 12% by way of flows, and mark to market, if you assume in the range of 10 to 11%, I think it's a good compounding story of 20% for foreseeable future, provided we continue to work strongly on the addition of SIP book. We continue to work strongly on winning the confidence of ground level distributors who work with us. So there might be intermittent volatility. It cannot be into a straight line. However, I think if you look at MFI vision paper, they say that today we are at 75 lakh crore. By next 20 years, this growth will be almost about 52 times. And this has been demonstrated by US. If you look at between 1980 to 2000, what has happened as far as the entire wealth management story of US is concerned, I think all the construct of US in 80 is now there in 2025 for the India. So I think we are very strongly, and that's the reason if you look at Prudent, we are very corely focused on mutual fund. We have not deviated to broking or other business line because we believe this is the best product for the retail investors.
Okay, Sanjay bhai, so I'm still, just so that people understand this well, right? The rate of growth at which you've grown for the last so many years, or let's say the last 5 years, yeah, give or take compounded about 25%, or you guide to 20, you do 25, 30, 35, whatever you do, but you effectively guide between 20 and 25% if I'm not wrong. Do you think you are in a position to be able to not officially forecast, but give a color of whether this is possible for the next 5 years, 7 years, 10 years?
Yeah, so I think, sir, if you look at rule of 72, I think if we compound at 20, my AUM should easily double over a period of 4.5 years, and that looks likely. I don't see too much of I'm not pessimistic. I think I'm a hardcore bull on my business, and very, very logically, I'm giving the explanation that the 20% CAGR is something which has not been overestimated. But you might have the flip side some point of time. But I think it's going to say if you might have a bad year once, but then it will definitely catch up.
Got it. Okay, guys. So 20%, right? He's saying he's forecasting to 20% growth, and that is to be on the safe side. But that's what they've done all through the last 5 years that I've seen. That under promise and over deliver.
Okay.
It seems to be the case for quite a few of the businesses in the space. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add to that, one thing I want to ask Sanjay is the SIP growth and the acquisition of Indus Capital. If you have to add that into context, you had targeted a 2,500 crore SIP book by FY29 initially. If you have to add Indus Capital, what does that lead to for the next 1 to 3 years?
I think Indus is a very small acquisition in my entire kitty because we have 125,000 crore of AUM, and Indus is roughly about 2,000 crore, which is we acquired. However, with acquisition of Indus, we wanted to give a very clear message to small distributors that we are there to acquire very small quality franchise, which has been professionally driven, which has a good management. Because today, if you look at in the country, almost large part of mutual fund distributors who have been they are then in this business for last 15-20 years, they must be in the age bracket of 50 to 55. And if they do not have any kind of what you call the business continuity plan, then we will definitely take care of their acquisition, provided the construct quality and the management capability is much, much better. So I think that was the one message we wanted to give to the entire mutual fund distribution community. And if we are able to do this consistently, then this can be a big mover for us in our growth drivers.
Okay, Sanjay bhai, we'll leave it at that. Thanks so much for taking the time out, and all the best for the quarters ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's Prudent Corporate Advisory Services, and well, strong growth all through the last few years, forecasting the same to be the case.